Hello, this is Baby Boomer Tales. My name is Jim. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've landed on our webpage, there are links to places you can listen to our podcast or watch our YouTube channel, links to our Shop Tales at Amazon store and our Boomers General store, pictures of that great country I talk so much about in north central Colorado Rocky Mountains, and also in northeastern Kansas. Glad to have you ride along today. Our song of the week is Happy Trails, sung by Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, and written by Dale Evans in 1951. They sang this song at the end of both their radio and TV shows. In 2025, this great song was inducted into the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant and inform or reflect life in the U.S. Happy trails to you until we meet again. In my home county in north central Colorado Rocky Mountains, up there on the Willow Creek, in 1900, the Dexter House was a stagecoach stop and post office. In 1917, a guy named Smiley purchased it and all the land and named it the F/Ranch. In 1946, Dick and Katie purchases the ranch, which by that time had guest houses and barns and a bunch of stuff around there also, and named it the Sea Lazy U. In 1947, my Uncle Charlie, who was my dad's uncle, and a friend of his named Francis, bought the Harrison Variety Store in my little hometown up there in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Now, Charlie was a great businessman, but he always seemed to lose his business or something happened and all this stuff, but he had a mind for business. And Francis had just got out of the war, World War II, and he had this knack that he saved every penny he made during the war. He'd send it home to his wife Elaine, she just stuck it in the bank. So Francis had the money to buy the variety store, and Charlie had the know-how and the desire, and the two of them went into partnership, moved up there from Nebraska, up to that little town where I speak so much about, up by the Rocky Mountain National Park, up on the west side of the Continental Divide. Well, Charlie was sick. He was always kind of a sickly individual, and he couldn't make it when they first bought that old variety store. So they took my dad and Francis and his wife Elaine and their son Jay and my dad went up there to that little town in Colorado and started fixing it up, making shelving and tearing out the old stuff that wasn't going to be good for them, painting and building and getting that little store ready to open up. Well, in about 1948, Dick and Katie came by to see how they were doing at that store and convinced Charlie, who had come back by then, and Francis, they ought to carry some cowboy boots and cowboy hats, maybe some blue jeans and western shirts for their guests that were coming up there to the Sea Lazy U. And so right then and there, the Trading Post was born. After Charlie came for Nebraska, after he had healed, my dad stopped working at the store. He became a justice of the peace, and he painted signs around town, and he kept pretty busy. Eventually, my dad would open a grocery store of his own. In a few years, the Trading Post built a brand new building 2 blocks to the west of that old storefront that they started, the old Harrison Variety, the place where the Trading Post was born. And this building had a southwestern look, and Uncle Charlie and Aunt Marion and Francis and Elaine built a business there, and it thrived. I remember there used to be a saddle out front sitting on a stand there, and little kids could get up and pretend they were riding a horse. The store building always had nice displays in the windows. You walk into the store and a pretty girl would usually greet you. Maybe there's my Uncle Charlie, all decked out in Western garb, saying, "How you doing, Jimmy?" The smell of leather, the displays of cowboy boots and Stetson hats. You could get anything you needed at the trading post. It wasn't just Western wear. You could get tennis shoes, several kinds of blue jeans. You can get your underwear and socks. You can get dress shirts and cowboy shirts and short sleeve shirts and polo shirts. They had a fine display of women's wear, shoes and boots. They also carried Pendleton blankets, Falstaff dishes, and everything was first class. Absolutely everything. Well, my dad's store was just about 3 doors down from the trading post, and I mowed my Uncle Charlie's yard when I was a boy, and I knew those folks very well. Francis and Elaine take me fishing up on the lake in their boat. We snagged those kokanee salmon. You walk in there, and they always greeted you with a smile. Well, Jay was 9 years old when they moved for Nebraska, and Jay and my dad were roommates when they were building that store downstairs. The living quarters were upstairs in the old store building. So Francis and Elaine had a room, my dad and Jay had a room, and there was room for Charlie and Marion when they finally got there. Once Jay graduated from high school, he studied business over at Western State, I think it was, and he came back and he started working the store. Now, Francis would walk up and down Main Street, and you could always spot him. He had his cowboy hat on and walk up and down. Well, Jay'd walk up and down Main Street too, pop his head in about every business up and down the street, see how everybody's doing. But Jay never wore a cowboy hat. The only time I remember even seeing him with a hat on was if he'd go hunting. He'd wear a hat then. He'd used to come in the store and get provisions or something. He'd have a hat on then. But he always wore cowboy boots. Well, that store prospered, and Francis and Charlie grew older. Charlie retired, and somehow I believe he just sold his half of the business to Francis and Elaine. And Jay came home from college and worked that store, and eventually he started running it. And for years that was the centerpiece of town. Every guest ranch in the whole region had stopped there to outfit the guests with boots and hats and jeans. That country up there used to be classified as the dude ranch capital of the world, and every one of them would go in there to the trading posts and outfit their guests. Back in 1979, I was just freshly married. We didn't even have any kids yet, living in a little trailer up there on the mesa. And Jay came by the house one time and was telling me how Jeff had left the store because that store always had 2 men in it and then several women working in there. And Francis was semi-retired, Jay's dad, and Jeff had left to do something else. And Jay invited me to come to work there at the trading post. Well, I was delivering potato chips at the time, and that was a lot of work and a lot of stress and a lot of driving, and I didn't much like that job. So I took Jay up on it. And for the next 8 years, I worked there at that store, and it was a very good place to work. I've never seen anybody like Jay. He was quite the giver. He'd give you something if you needed it like nobody's business. First thing he did with me was he gave me a brand new pair of cowboy boots. And I'd get about 2 new pairs a year, just as an employee perk there. But he was known for his generosity around the community, how he served on the town council. There was never a person that wasn't his friend, I don't think. Even if you didn't get along with him, you guys were friends. He was a great ambassador for that community, and that store was second to none. Jay taught me everything I ever knew about business. It was such a wonderful atmosphere to work in. The pay was good. It was like a family there, it really was. The Sea Lazy later became known as the finest guest ranch in the United States. And the Trading Post was probably the very finest Western store in Colorado. Now, I know a couple people that might disagree with me, and I have friends that they owned Western wear stores, and I knew them through my time at the Trading Post. But that store was quality through and through. Gave a lot of people jobs. Everything was always clean and first class with them. What I did there at that store, more than anything, is for some reason the girls did not like selling people boots. Maybe it just was those things that was handed down from the early days of the store, but if somebody wanted a pair of boots, one of the gals would come find me or Jay, and we'd fit them up with boots. There's a little trick to selling a pair of cowboy boots. Everybody thinks because the back slips up and down, they're too big. And in reality, if they didn't slip a little, you're going to get a blister. You want those suckers to slip some. Cowboy boots are probably the most comfortable footwear I've ever had. You might have to get used to them, just a little learning curve. That doesn't matter. We had both of our children while I was working there, Trading Post. And Jay's family was kind of my family. In fact, his family always looked at my Uncle Charlie as their uncle. In reality, how Jay explained it one time is, well, it's kind of like my dog pees in your yard and your dog pees in my yard and we all get along okay. In my heart, all those folks are family. In life, you look back, and old Frank Sinatra probably said it best, regrets I've had a few, but then again too few to mention. Well, after about 8 years, I was still young and probably wanted to change the world still. I was getting a little antsy, and one of the very, very few things I regret in life happened. I quit Jay and I went into competition with him. I kept telling myself I wasn't in competition with him because I wasn't a Western wear store, but in a town that size, basically right next door to each other, if I had to do it all again, I never would have done that. But Jay handled it like a true gentleman. I was amazed at his reaction. Years later, we came back to that town and eating dinner at a pretty nice place there, and I went and paid for my bill, and they said, there's no bill here. Jay paid it. I went out, I found him, he was just leaving, and we got to talk for a while. And I told him of my regrets, and he looked me right in the eye. He says, Uncle Charlie told me one time, the good ones are always going to leave you. And I always expected it. And there's no hard feelings at all. What a class act. I hope that I could have reacted that way. Well, that town went through a terrible thing at the end of the 80s. And a lot of businesses closed. And a lot of people lost their stores and moved away. And we were one of them. We just had not been there long enough to survive that terrible time economically in that town. It's bounced back good now. 6 years later, though, Jay retired and sold the Trading Post. And the Trading Post is no longer. Those folks that bought it changed the name of it, changed the outside, changed the whole appearance of it, and changed the whole inside. You never know you're in the same place. I went in there, looked around. My heart broke a little. It really did. Well, a few months ago, I found out that Jay passed away. He was living in western Colorado by that time, retired and happy as a lark. He liked to go fishing, and I think he built himself a fishing pond, just kind of hung out there later years in life. Toots, his wife, is still doing fine, last time I heard. You know, they say that through life there'll always be someone special that was in your life that made a big difference, that their spirit stays with you forever. I think Jay was that person for me. What a quality individual. So today's episode's not about the Trading Post at all. It's about my friend Jay. Happy trails, my friend. Always be kind. I'll be back next Wednesday. Peace out.